Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It certainly is a pleasure to be here, and it certainly is great to be in a place that does not have snow. That makes me happy. Before I get too far, I want to say to Mr. Mueller, where's Mr. Mueller? I certainly appreciated your presentation. Your dedication to your cows is very evident, and I have to say your accent is phenomenal. To Mr. Prince, as a former stocker guy myself, I can appreciate your attention to your cattle. God knows that stocker cattle at times can be challenging, and it looks like you do a phenomenal job, so thank you to you. To the people that are going to follow me, I cannot wait to hear your successes also. I'm sure that your places are unique, and I'm sure your talents will be very easily seen. Before I begin the presentation, I want to thank a couple people. First of all, Mr. Gary Wilson. Gary, thank you for the invitation to do this. This is certainly a pleasure. And to anyone from Ohio or anyone that's been in the grazing business, I have to thank Darrell Clark and a guy named Mark Bennett. Mark Bennett gave me my itch to become a grazer and to try to do the best job I could on our farm. I'd also be remiss to forget to thank my wife, Susan. Susan, if you would, please stand and be recognized. Susan does a phenomenal job, quite simply, of putting up with me. And it really is that simple. And I have to say before I begin my presentation that you know that we are a committed ag couple. When at home for our special anniversary, I got a grazing stick. That's as good as it gets for a guy like me. So, I'd be remiss to not mention Susan. When I was asked to do this, I kept walking and asking myself, what am I going to talk about? How am I different? Or what does academia want to hear from me? But also, what do the producers want to hear from me? I, like most of the rest of the guys, have cool season grasses. We have a lot of hot fence, a lot of waters. We have livestock. We're all the same. But how am I different? So I did something very, very simple. I started walking around, started driving around, and looking at things that make our farm unique, that make us different, that maybe sets us apart, sometimes good, sometimes bad, from the rest of the people here. The first thing I want to talk about is heavy use pads. We are a low equipment farm, period. We have no tractors. We have no tedders. We have no hay equipment. We have no corn planters. We have no sprayers. I have a skid steer and 2 four-wheelers, and they get used a lot. But what makes us successful in getting some of the things done that we do at home are our heavy use pads. When it's ugly outside, when it's frozen, when it's muddy, when it's too hot, when it's too cold, the heavy use pads allow us to do a lot of things. That's a big investment for us, and it's one that's paid off very well. I said we're low equipment, and along with the heavy use pads, we still need some things to make us successful. It's not like we're blessed with dollars. Mr. Prince mentioned dollars, and it always is funny to me how producers are somehow quiet when it comes to talking about dollars. We have investments in lots of other things, and I'm going to talk about some of those investments today. It's become evident to us that high labor, high feed, high depreciation, and high equipment costs usually equals low success. At least it does for a grazer. And I think you'll find it to be true on most farms. Along with investments in things like heavy use pads, we have chosen to invest a lot of money in good genetics. I'm a huge believer in genetics, not only in livestock, but also in seed. Mentioning seed, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Kevin Fowler. Fowler Seed Marketing, and you may see coming up here in the presentation a recognition of Kevin. Kevin has been a phenomenal asset to us and to a lot of people in Ohio. He's been very patient with us in helping us to learn, to become productive, and he's been very patient in helping us along the way. He's a great asset, and so if you see Kevin, please thank him for me. I mentioned genetics in livestock. A couple of things I want to mention to cow-calf producers. We have roughly 120 cows at home. We used to be spring and fall calving, now we're strictly spring. But I'm a huge proponent of cows that are similar, not only in genetics, but in type and kind. It makes marketing your calf crop much, much, much easier. I just had a discussion with one of my former feeders that we precondition cattle for, and he is quitting, quite simply, feeding cattle because it's hard for him to find genetics in load lots from Ohio that perform. He's tired of calves that gain 3.5 and calves that gain 1.5 in the same pen, on the same feed, under the same management. He is tired of trying to feed calves for the grid that end up weighing 1,000 pounds and 14.50. Please make sure the cows are similar in type and kind. Talking genetics, I absolutely love good bulls. We still do a lot of AI work at home. By the way, that's an example of one of our newest bulls from Tim Oldie. Tim, for those of you that don't know Tim, is a phenomenal cattle guy, a phenomenal forage guy, and a guy that thinks way outside the box. That is a Hereford Friesian. That's what we're going to breed all of our heifers to next. Anyway, investing in good bulls, we do a lot of AI stuff at home. We do some embryo stuff at home, but it became really evident to me quickly that an investment in a really, really good bull or a set of bulls would often take you further and get you there a lot quicker. I mentioned breeding heifers. Tim Oldie taught me one thing that I will never, ever, ever forget. There's an example of another bull that we raised at home. For you genetics guys or girls, excuse me, women, he's an Emblazon FO203 for the Angus people. Tim, back to the heifers, told me to, when we're selecting heifers for replacements, to look at them when they're weaned or when they're supposed to be weaned, and then forget about them. Make your selection and forget about them. Raise them on grass, forget about them. They will be what you thought they would be in time. It goes against a lot of people thoughts that are used to putting inputs, silage, corn, bean meal, gluten, soy hulls into their heifers. But we raise our heifers on grass. We forget about them. They get rough for a while, but they always come back and become phenomenal mamas. Speaking of heifers, I also learned something from Tim, but also from Kit Farrow, and that is quite simply, milk costs you money. We are low input, we are low dollars invested in inputs, and milk costs you money. Not Mr. Mueller's kind of milk, but beef cows kind of milk. I have a good friend in Virginia named Jeremy Eng. Does anyone here know Jeremy, by the way? The first time Jeremy sent a load of stalker calves to me, I will readily admit that I did not like them. I didn't know what he was sending me, and I wasn't appreciative of what Jeremy was doing with the Devons. After about 3 months, I called him back and said, I owe you an apology. Your cattle are phenomenal. They're doing a phenomenal job on grass and ended up gaining about 2.7. What I'm getting at is Jeremy's cattle are different. He happens to be exclusively, or for the most part, exclusively in the Devons, and I had no experience with Devons. That leads me to my next point. As a stalker person, as a cow-calf guy, and now as a person in the export business, it's become really clear to me that all breeds of cattle have merit. They really do. All cattle have merit. The black ones, the red ones, the horned ones, the polled ones, the short ones, the big ones, they all have merit, but they may not have merit in your program. I've seen a lot of people try to throw lots of breeds of cattle into their mix and make a Heinz 57 that they thought would work. It's been our experience to see that concentrating on 2 or 3 breeds of cattle really gets you a long ways quicker. Obviously, we've all heard about hybrid vigor. We know how that works to your advantage, and it's free. One thing that we've also had to learn sometimes the hard way is we now have the ability to graze our own calves all the way until we sell them. Thank you. We used to be in the stalker business, as I said before. We now have the ability to graze our own calves, 50 cents for the pound of gain versus $1.30 for a pound of gain. Pretty simple math. I'll wrap up with this. The discussion for today was supposed to be on what does grazing do for you or your farm. You can see we do some things different. I mentioned we're in the export business also. But the farm is primarily meant to further our children and our goals for our children. By the way, you can still see we have problems on our own farm. Flat tires. With our children, we have 4. We're blessed with 4. Lauren, Ian, Leah, and Aiden. Those children have participated in everything we do at home. The good, the bad, the ugly, the pretty, the sweaty, the muddy, and the fun, they've participated. We really, really believe in working with our children. That's what the farm for us is meant to do. Forage management has allowed us to not only pay attention to our children, but allowed us, as you saw earlier, to venture out on a new business, and that's the poultry business. Never dreamt I'd be in the poultry business. But because the cows are on their own, because the grazing program is on its own, we can now set out to do some different things. The poultry industry I have no experience in, but it has been good to us. It's allowed us and our family to do some different things. I'll leave you with this. Susan and I are convinced we're making leaders in our children. We firmly believe in all those leaders, and I'm sure every one of you at home have children that are going to become leaders. Challenge those children and challenge yourselves every single day. Please challenge yourself. Challenge the people that help you. Challenge your bankers. Challenge your fertilizer people. Challenge your bull people. Challenge your milk people. Secondly, think outside the box. And if you really, really get after it, destroy the box. The box holds you in. The box holds your ideas in, and it doesn't really let you become you. Thirdly, don't ever be satisfied. Don't ever, ever be satisfied. But when you become satisfied, enjoy it. Know that you've gotten there. And I know that all of you have had a lot of hard work and determination to get there. Fourthly, communicate. What I mean by that is, I mentioned Susan, my wonderful wife and spouse, partner. There are times, thank you, there are times where our communication has not gotten us to where we need to be. And I used to tell people up until just a year or so ago that we never really had a breakdown, one of those good fights. But due to lack of communication, our first major fight was sorting cows and calves on a beautiful winter day, and it was a good one. So please communicate. Lastly, thank your spouse. For most of us here, it happens to be your wife. But for the wives here, thank your husband. They are your partners. They are the people that pick you up, the people that support you. In a family business like ours, you need support because as you all well know, there are troubling times. Support your spouse and thank them. With that, I end. I'm sure we have some questions, Gary, or I'm hoping we have some questions. If we don't, thank you for your time. It was certainly a pleasure. Any questions from anyone? Bob?
Export business. What are you exporting?
Bob's question is the export business. What are we exporting? Long story short, 2-minute synopsis. A year and a half ago, a white Cadillac from Missouri drives in the driveway. We are literally unloading chicks into the poultry buildings. And the guy pops out and says, I'm so-and-so, my friend is so-and-so. We're here to meet you. I hear your farm is different. I'm like, oh my gosh, what does this mean? Through all the conversation, they had heard that we are set up to do some things that a lot of farms are not. We've got big paddocks, bigger corrals, the ability to work cattle through a hydraulic system, load and unload trucks. And they were looking for an isolation facility to export cattle primarily. Through some discussion, essentially we said yes, we're interested. So along with being a cow-calf guy and a stocker operator, and now a poultry thing, we do also export cattle. We're down to 200. From last July through now, we've gone through about 5,700 head. We did 2 orders of 1,500 head Holsteins, a small order of Jerseys, 2 orders of 900 head each Angus cattle going to Russia, and now we're finishing up with 2 feeder cattle orders to go to Turkey. It has been a whirlwind experience. It's been great for our family. It's been great for us. It has been troubling at times. I'm not going to lie to you, but that's our newest business venture, and it's been wonderful. Thanks for asking. Any other questions from anyone? Again, thank you for your time.
Thank you.